Hey guys, this is Mrs. D, and today we're going to read Jake Makes a World. This book was written by Sharifa Rhodes and illustrated by Christopher Myers. In the morning, Jake watches the sun wake up. He makes a big stretch, and the sun stretches too. With the first light, the dancing dark shadows begin to fade. Then the colors come again. Yellow, orange, and blue on the quilt that covers Jake and his brother in bed. Mother's paper flowers in pink and red. His feet sink deep into the thick blue rug. When his toes touch the ground, it's like a sky upside down. When Jake moved to this new city, this New York, to this neighborhood called Harlem to live with his mother again, these familiar things from his old home in Philadelphia greeted him like long lost friends. Outside Jake's building, men play chess and checkers, balancing the boards on their knees. Older boys sell fruit from a wagon or ice from a bucket, shouting for people to come down and get it. Mothers walk fast to work and more work. Signs promise home cooked meals for 15 cents and a shoe shine to make you brand new. A preacher in a hat shouts and sings about God. A newsboy tells the stories of the day from downtown and around the world, but tells them with a tune. At the corner, a short man stands on a stepladder, telling everyone how we will get the freedom we need. Most days after school, Jake goes to a place called Utopia Children's House. The word utopia means that it is a special place unlike any other. For Jake, it is. At Utopia House, Jake makes things with his hands. He carves a block of soap into a fish. He sews scraps of leather into a secret pouch. With watercolors, he swirls the shadows that dance on his wall at dawn and the patterns of the rugs in his living room. Jake takes a stick of charcoal and draws a pair of eyes to see everything the people on the street see. He draws one pair of ears to hear all the shouts and songs, one mouth to carry all their voices. All the faces Jake sees on the street become one face. Jake shows this new face to his teacher, who smiles and nods and says, "You should see this, a very old mask from Africa." Jake stares at the mask for a long while, and then he makes his own mask from brown paper bags and glue and paint. When he is done, the mask smiles at him. Next, Jake takes a shoebox, and in the box, he tries to fit the whole street. Inside are cardboard chessmen, tiny toys, boys folded from construction paper, and mothers walking fast to work, wearing dresses cut from magazines. He stacks matchboxes to make buildings and paves the streets with sandpaper. Jake has made a world, a small piece of this place called Harlem. It is now his home. Jake's Harlem has all the shouts and songs and noises of the Harlem outside, but here they are not sounds, they are colors, they are shadows dancing, they are rhythms, they are light. All right, friends, so we are going to do a cool art project together. In the story, Jake talked about his quilt that covered him and his brother. So today I'm going to show you how to make your very own paper quilt. This one has been worked on for a little bit. It's made completely out of paper, but when I scrunch it up and I squish it, it almost feels like a thin piece of cloth. On the back where my paper maybe tore, I added some tape. So I'll show you how to do that. Let's get started. The first thing we're going to need is a clean sheet of paper. So I've got my clean sheet of paper, and now I'm going to use a Sharpie marker. You don't have to use a Sharpie marker. Any marker will be fine. The first step we're going to do for our quilt is we are going to add our patch lines. And I'm going to make this an irregular squiggly line. going to go all the way across my page. They can be as big or as skinny. See, it's a little skinnier over there. Because quilts are not perfect. Quilts are usually made by hand, and they usually tell a story, just like the story Jake told about his day in Harlem. When he got to go to Utopia, he got to make a fun world, and you can make an art world too with any materials you find at home. Today we're going to make a paper quilt. You can use this in your artist toolbox, this paper quilt, for any other of your drawings too. It's really easy. Once we have our quilt pattern drawn, I'm going to add some stitches. And I could add some round stitches, maybe like a football, or some X stitches, like a doll maybe. Or I can just add some regular stitches, clean and even. Maybe I can add some big ones. Miss DelOlmo is going to finish real quick adding a variety of stitches. Some going this way, some round. Maybe I have some round and some X's. And I'm going to try to make sure that my whole quilt is held together. Maybe I'll put one in the middle. There we go. Some thick ones over here. Do all my pieces have a stitch? They do. Now I'm going to use my quilts to tell a story. And in each of my squares, I'm going to draw a new picture that tells you all about my world and my world here in Colorado. I see lots of mountains in Colorado, trees. Miss DelOlmo's drawing super fast, but you guys can slow it down and draw some better pictures. I bet you guys can come up with a lot of ideas. Once you've filled your paper quilt with pictures, you can even pause this video right now so that you can fill this with pictures and press play when you're ready to continue. The next step is to color it. So pause the video again and color it. And then when you're ready, press play again. And then the next step, after we've colored it, after we've drawn it, we've colored it, we've got beautiful colors, it's telling our story, our piece of the quilt. The next step's a lot of fun. We've got to crush it. So satisfying, right? So we're going to crush this up, and open it. Right? Keep crushing it and carefully opening it up again. And crush it again. And you're just going to keep going back and forth. Right? Open, crush. I had a friend who said he twisted his and that made it go better, but be careful if you're twisting, and especially when you're crunching, that when you open it back up again, you protect your picture, you protect your artwork. We don't want to tear it too much. It works really good if you can flatten it out completely before you crunch it up again. That's the best way to do it. So let's keep going. So I've tried to iron out the crinkles, and I'm going to crunch it up again. And we're just going to keep going. I'm going to squeeze it as hard as I can. Ugh. Oops, there's my mask. Keep going. Crunching, opening, flattening, crunching. It's almost like a fidget too. Like when you're in class, it gets to the point where it's not so loud anymore. Or maybe you are hanging out somewhere, I don't know, crumple some paper and make yourself a paper quilt. You could use it as a map, maybe for social studies, if you have to draw something for social studies. Maybe you can make your own blanket. It doesn't have to be a quilt. I use the quilt just because of the example from the story when Jake woke up in the beginning and he had a quilt with his brother. It covered him and his brother. Jake went through his whole day looking at his world and trying to be observant of the things that were in his art world. And he used a lot of materials at the end to make his art world. It came out beautiful. So you guys can make your own art worlds too. And it looks like my paper has gotten torn, so I'm going to go ahead and tape this. And I want to show you how to do it. We're going to flip it over to the back. And wherever your paper is torn on this edge, and I got another one over here, we're going to try to fix it as much from the back as we can. Once I've gotten it all lined up, I'm going to grab some tape. And it can be clear tape like I have, or you can even use blue tape, black tape, masking tape. It doesn't matter what color tape you use because when you flip it back to the front and you have this crack here, maybe you can see the tape and maybe you can't. We can add a little stitch to it and actually highlight that mistake. And I can make it look like that rip was a rip in the blanket that I had to get fixed. And I can do it on this side too. Once you're all done crumpling it and opening it, you'll notice that it changes its properties a little bit. It doesn't act like a stiff piece of paper. All of a sudden it moves like a little blanket, like a little paper quilt. I had fun reading and creating with you today. As always, until we see again, happy arting.